The IRS is notifying back office employees that they will temporarily cover frontline filing season work through the summer. Training for these detailed employees will begin nearly a month after the start of this year's tax filing season. The agency's Taxpayer Service Division lost a significant number of employees last year, and the IRS also fell short of its hiring goals this season. Federal News Network's Jory Heckman is here with more details. Jory, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Terry.
I feel like this is not a big surprise, as you and I have talked about the IRS's workforce challenges over the past several months. Who are they bringing over to handle taxpayer services work?
So based on what I've been able to find out here, it looks like this is mostly going to be human resources employees and IT employees. That latter category, the IRS did move a significant number of IT employees out of its tech shop and has been really not giving them a lot of details on what was going to be happening next with them. They were, in some regards, in limbo on terms of reassignments to new work. So these are the two streams of people who will be carrying out this work, and they'll mostly be working as customer service representatives. They'll be handling inquiries from taxpayers calling in with concerns or questions, and as tax examiners, the folks who will be on the front lines reviewing the accuracy of incoming tax returns. And based on the memo that was sent out to employees on Monday, neither of those positions will be engaging directly with taxpayers or answering phone calls. They will be more in a support type position, helping those people who are on the phones or interacting with the public in some kind of way.
I guess you could start from a presumption that both human resources and IT have a customer assistance function to them. So maybe these folks aren't coming cold to that requirement, but is there any training that's planned for them before they take on these roles?
There is training that will happen later this month, around the 23rd, but that's a month into the tax filing season, and almost by definition, they won't be getting the full amount of training they would normally get in these positions. There was a recent Watchdog report about this, and they say that normally these positions take about 60 to 80 days to train up, and if you were to follow that full scope of training here, that would be the end of the filing season, and there really wouldn't be much point in moving these people over. So the expectation is that these people will be getting some sort of expedited training. These are positions they are not familiar with. This is something, a new line of work that they'll be carrying out. And there are some concerns here from the people who have been tapped to carry out this work that they may not be fully trained up and qualified to do the kind of work they're being asked to do.
How long will these details actually be in effect? Is it through the end of the filing season? Will it be longer? Is it a recurring potential?
At this point, what we are hearing is that these are going to be 120-day details to taxpayer services. They're involuntary. They don't really have a say in the matter. And in some cases, they may be extended for a longer period of time, but the 120 days basically gets us to the end of June, roughly. And so that'll be well past the filing season. It'll allow them to do some sort of last-minute work for the filing season. And of course, if people file for an extension into October, they would be handling some of that work as well.
So, Jory, just walk us through the logic of how we got here. Why do we have to reassign HR and IT people to do customer-facing tax assistance?
This is happening because taxpayer services saw a major exodus of talent last year, that they saw about 20% of taxpayer service employees leave voluntarily through incentives last year. That's about 8,600 taxpayer services employees. And the IRS realized that they needed to hire up to fill that gap, and they weren't fully successful in doing that. The agency set some hiring goals and they fell short for this filing season. In some cases, they got 2/3 of the people they needed for some positions. In other cases, they got about 2% of the people they were looking to fill. And so by all accounts, they are looking to address that shortfall in some kind of way. And the IRS is also, more broadly, they lost more than a quarter of their employees across the entire organization. So they're not rich with employees in other parts of the organization that they can borrow from.
Well, in fact, borrowing from IT and HR is a little bit like biting the hand that feeds you. You need the HR folks to help with the hiring. You need the IT folks to keep the systems operating. If you're moving them over into the tax preparation side, who's doing that work?
Right. And at least in the case of HR, they are dealing with a significant backlog of retirement cases for employees who did leave last year. They simply don't have the manpower to handle that workload in a expedited fashion. And so there's some concern if you move HR employees away from that workload, that the backlog is only going to get worse.
For the folks who have received these reassignment notices, have they made any comment about what they're experiencing?
They're really concerned about what's going to be happening next. I spoke to HR employees. I spoke to IT employees who are getting these notices. And in the case of one of these IT employees I spoke to, they said that they are relieved that they are at least getting some kind of work. They were uncertain about what their next step was going to be after they were moved out of the IT shop. And so there's some gratitude, some relief that they're at least being told to do something at the agency, but they are unfamiliar with this kind of work. They previously worked in some pretty technical and jargony work, and so that they are not used to customer-facing duties, and so they're really going to have to train up quickly to understand the scope of the work. And then in another case, I spoke to an IRS manager who pretty soon will be getting about 80 employees who are a mix of HR and IT employees to handle this work. And similarly, they aren't quite sure to what degree are they going to be trained up to do the work that they need to do in taxpayer services.
Jory, this seems like a Band-Aid on a major wound. What is the IRS strategy for systemically addressing these staffing shortfalls?
This is by and large a temporary shift in personnel. As far as a long-term strategy, I don't know if we have an answer to that quite yet, but there was some recognition of some growing pains, I guess you could call them, from taxpayer services. They sent a memo to employees basically keeping them up to speed on what's happening with these reassignments. And they did say in this memo, whether these are new hires or these detailed employees, if you see someone struggling in the job, don't be afraid to offer them help because they may be unfamiliar with the work. And there is some recognition that there are employees who are going to be relatively new at the work they're being asked to do.
That's Federal News Network's Jory Heckman. Jory, thanks as always for keeping us up to speed on these important personnel actions.
Thanks, Terry.
You can find his story at federalnewsnetwork.com.